everyone, and welcome to a stanza by stanza breakdown of the Faerie Queene. Today we are focusing on the first stanza in the Proem of the Faerie Queene. This is how it reads, how the first stanza reads. Low-eyed the man whose muse whilome did mask, as time her taught in lowly shepherd's weeds, and now enforced a far unfitter task, for trumpet stern to change mine oaten reeds, and sing of knights and ladies' gentle deeds, whose praises having slept in silence long, me, all too mean, the sacred muse areads, to blazon broad amongst her learned throng, fierce wares and faithful loves shall moralize my song. So now we're going to go into the breakdown of the stanza. Something worth noting is while I have a bachelor's degree in English, I have not specialized in this particular era of literature, in Elizabethan era literature. Certainly not poetry, but I really loved this poem. I really love the way it's written. It's beautifully written. So what I'm doing is I am cross-referencing some knowledge that I have of the Elizabethan era and some of the things that it borrows, as well as looking at 3 annotated texts. One was the Penguin Classic. This is the easiest to get a hold of, but I found the Longman 2nd edition to probably be the most helpful. You can find this on Google Books. And then this is on Project Gutenberg. It is George Armstrong Wauchope. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his name, who also provides some annotations as well. So I'm cross-referencing these 3 annotated books along with some of my own observations in order to give us a full picture of what is being said in this poem. And of course we are starting with the Proem and stanza 1. So, the first lines, low-eyed the man whose muse whilome did mask. So line 1 is an imitation of the opening lines of Virgil's Aeneid. Whilome means for some time before, did mask means went into disguise. And something that you're going to notice in the Faerie Queene is that there are a lot of allusions and references and imitations of previous works. Some Greek, some Italian. And I think there might be some older English references in there as well. I don't remember fully. We'll learn as we go through. But this is something, low-eyed the man whose muse whilome did mask. This is also the beginning, and I'll reference this later, of what Edmund is doing here is something also known as invoking the muse, and we'll see that more solidly referenced in stanza 2. But it's a way of setting the field, setting the feel of the poem and what's going to happen, and it's the general thought was that humans can't create a great work by themselves. They need help from a muse. And we're going to see that more in the poem. Line 2. As time her taught in lowly shepherd's weeds. So weeds actually means clothing here. It means clothes. So as time she taught in lowly shepherd's clothing is the way to look at it. It's a way of referring to the lower status of the speaker. And then line 3 is, am now enforced a far unfitter task. Enforced means he's being compelled, which I think a lot of you probably picked up on, but specifically he's being compelled by the muse. He is unfit for it, but the muse is forcing him to recite this poem. Now for lines 4 through 6, we have, for trumpet stern to change mine oaten reeds. It's something worth noting is trumpet stern means trumpets of heroic poetry recounting deeds of war. This also lets us know that the story of this poem is going to have a war in it. It is a way of, like I said, setting the stage, painting kind of the field of literature that this is going to take place on. Oaten reeds is a symbol of pastoral poetry, meaning that this does not take place in a bustling city, but rather on the countryside. Line 5 is, and sing of knights and ladies' gentle deeds. Now, Knights and Ladies is an imitation of an Italian epic poem, and this is a way that the author Edmund Spenser is kind of showing, not only setting the stage, not only calling for the muse from these different, he's letting us know different inspirations for this poem, but it's also a way of garnering the muse. The muse that granted these other great works is now granting him this ability to recount this epic poem. It's also worth noting that gentle here doesn't mean gentle in the modern form, but it means noble deeds. So there's going to be we're also getting the painting here that this is a knightly tale. This is a knight and a lady, and gentle meaning noble, meaning that we're going to see noble deeds. We're going to see highlights of a knight's code in this, and it follows that knightly tale, that of an oral tale that's been passed down. Line 6 says, whose praises having slept in silence long. This is implying a traditional beginning. This is the way a lot of epic poetry starts, like no one has heard this before. This is a long secret, that sort of thing. It's just a way of saying, okay, I've laid out in lines 1 through 3, where we have the invocation of the muse. We let them know that the speaker is placing himself below the muse is compelling him, and then we get the outline that this is going to be a noble tale of knights and ladies in a pastoral setting, and then whose praises having slept in silence long, which is kind of along the lines of a traditional beginning. Now we're getting into we've set the stage, now we're getting into the beginning of the tale. But before we get to that, we have a little bit more. Line 7 is me, all too mean, the sacred musa reads. Me, the speaker, is now taking the role of poet or prophet. Notice how the focus was put on the muse before. Now the speaker is coming forward, casting off the lowly shepherd figure that he was back in line 2. And he is now becoming the embodiment of the poem and the muse has granted him that power to share. Too mean is of a lowly degree. It's a way of evoking modesty. The muse that Edmund is evoking is from old Greek tradition, which we'll see in the next stanza. And one of the things that you always have to do when evoking Greek figures is put yourself in a lower position to them because you are asking for their favor. It's a way of not only showing humility, but it's almost like a prayer that the poem goes well. A reads is counsel, meaning he's asking the muse for counsel as well. Line 8 is to blazon broad amongst her learned throng. Blazon broad is to make known and to be praised abroad, meaning that he's hoping that everyone will know his tale and that it will receive high praise. And then finally, line 9 is fierce wares and faithful loves shall moralize my song. This is another allusion to that Italian epic Orlando Furioso. I cannot pronounce these names, I apologize. Faithful is to counter the skepticism because the Orlando poem was much more cynical and skeptical of love, but this is more classical, and that's why faithful is put in here. It's a way of like, no, this is a traditional romance, not one that is overshadowed by skepticism. And moralize means it's meant to illustrate a moral truth rather than explicitly explain them. So it's just kind of, it's not like an Aesop's fable where it's outlined for you at the end. It's meant for people to internalize implicitly, I guess is the best way to put it. So finally, the summary of stanza 1 is, this stanza is opening the proem, displaying the speaker as a person of humble beginnings. Throughout the beginning of the invocation of the muse, which will be named in the next stanza, the speaker transforms from someone of lowly means to someone graced by the muse. He hopes this grace will help his story invoke a common good. Allusions to other epics and Roman writers is further effort to invoke the muse, meaning kind of what I explained before. He's alluding to these different poems because they did so well, and he is trying to get the muse to grace him that way as well. So I hope this helped with the understanding of the poem. Like I said before, I am cross-referencing annotated text as well as some of my own interpretations and my own knowledge. So I hope if you guys got something else from any of these, please feel free to share. But this was just my understanding of it. This is just going to be kind of the way it goes, kind of a nice breakdown. Let me know if this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.